Lest we forget. Good morning. God moves in mysterious ways. Whoever thought that a day would come that as the president of the bar, I would be talking about an event I personally, to some extent, experienced. During our secondary school days, young as we were, a day dawned that we wished had ended differently. My acquaintance with some of the children of one of the deceased judges, whose untimely demise we sadly observe today, began during one long vacation as we attended vacation classes, which brought students from various schools together. Thereafter, even though we had moved on to different secondary schools, we will still reconnect, especially during the long vacations. Whenever we met, we agreed on our next outing, the venue and time. On that particular day in June 1982, when I got to the venue, the atmosphere was not the usual bubbly one for secondary school students brimming with stories from the past term at school. There was clear tension in the air, but no explanation was being offered by anyone. The grown-ups were talking in hushed tones. I kept on wondering what was amiss. Then my friend drew me aside and told me her mother was missing. Various questions started racing through my young mind. Is it possible for such a lady of her caliber to vanish? Where could she be? What was being done to find her? How were my friends going to cope with such a situation? As we walked back to our various homes in Lower Hill, Legon, we were quite confused, but we prayed for the best. A few days later, we learned from our parents that some judges had been murdered, including my friend's mother. That afternoon when we met, we sat in silence as friends, as Job's friends did in Job chapter 2, verse 13, save for the snippets of information shared by them on this grave news. We still had a glimmer of hope that it could be a case of mistaken identity. But the nail was driven into the coffin as we sat together. They informed us that an identification had taken place and her demise had been confirmed. Our world changed, and it is with heavy heart that I recount some of the information they shared with us that day. How were our friends and the families of these judges and military officers going to cope? Throughout their lives, there would be constant reminders that they would have to live with all the time. How could persons serving the nation lose their lives in this manner? What a costly loss. Never again should this dear nation of ours conduct its affairs in any manner or form that will leave such a most unfortunate and unavoidable blemish. This saga, lest we forget, actually started unfolding when on Thursday, July 1st, 1982, the 22nd anniversary of our beloved republic, the Ghana Broadcasting Corporation reported a news item that sounded routine and unnecessary initially. All judges, it was announced, were thenceforth to be provided with armed security for their protection. Since the judges already had security protection of some sort, the announcement made little impression on the general population, particularly lawyers. Not even the most skeptical suspected that behind the news item was a repugnant episode, the horrible details of which were to unfold later. Soon it was announced officially that 3 High Court judges and a retired army officer had been abducted at night during the curfew hours of 30th June 1982. Prayers were offered for their safety. But the nation's worst fears became a reality when it was announced that Mr. Justice Fred Opoku Sarkodie, Mrs. Justice Cecilia Koranteng-Addow, and Mr. Justice Kwadwo Agyei Agyepong, all judges of the High Court, and Major Sam Akwa, a retired army officer, had been most brutally and savagely murdered on the night of their abduction. This cruel, horrendous, and heartless act occurred at the Bundase military range in the Accra Plains. The bodies of these precious Ghanaians had been soaked with petrol and set on fire. Divine intervention through a heavy downpour that night quenched the burning bodies. When discovered, the charred bodies had deteriorated into a state of decomposition. The nation was stunned. There was swift, widespread, and open condemnation by lawyers, by Ghanaians from all walks of life. Pressure mounted on the then military government for a thorough investigation and punishment of the perpetrators. The Provisional National Defense Council, publicly declaring being horrified by the crime and yielding to the strong public pressure, appointed a special investigation board with a former Chief Justice of Ghana, the late Mr. Justice Samuel Azukrab, as chairman to investigate the murders. The courage and professional expertise of the Special Investigation Board's main investigator, the late Chief Superintendent Jacob Jiboni Yidana, an officer of the Ghana Police Service, will go down in the history of Ghana as the qualities that helped produce one of the best criminal investigations ever undertaken in this country. The Special Investigation Board submitted a report which was published along with a government white paper. The Special Investigation Board made a number of findings leading to the prosecution of Joachim Amatekwe, a member of the PNDC, Lance Corporals Samuel Amedeka and Michael Senya, and 2 ex-soldiers, Johnny Jandu and Tony Tekpo. All accused persons were found guilty and sentenced to death. This is a brief resume of the historical background to the dreadful events we have met here today to commemorate. Our departed justices died in the line of duty to their dear nation, to their countrymen, and to the rule of law. For the past 42 years, the bar and the bench have mourned the death of these martyrs of the rule of law. In response to the call for reconciliation by the National Reconciliation Commission and the biblical injunction that we should forgive those who trespass against us, we have forgiven the wrongdoers for their cowardly and evil deeds. But we still remember these martyrs of the rule of law and will continue to celebrate them, lest we forget what they lived and died for. The bar and bench acknowledge and proclaim those good qualities and deeds for which they were murdered. Justice Fred Opoku Sarkodie, Cecilia Koranteng-Addow, and Kwadwo Agyei Agyepong. The bar, bench, and the people of Ghana salute you and draw inspiration from the bold and courageous manner in which you administered justice in those challenging times. You died in the line of duty. You performed your duty as judges without fear or favor. You stood for the rule of law. Your assassins hated what you stood for and murdered you, but they could not eliminate what you stood for. Your monument stands in the forecourt of the Supreme Court building as a constant reminder of the good qualities required of a judge. Permit me at this juncture to highlight a matter mentioned in the decision of Her Ladyship, Justice Koranteng-Addow, in the case of the Republic versus Director of Prisons and another, ex parte Shackelford, 1981 GLR, page 554. In her judgment, she observed at page 576 that people had used the AFRC era to settle old scores. This was the underlying reason for the brutish murders, which unfortunately have become a dark part of our national history. Bitterness, which gave rise to a vendetta, the consequences of which went very wrong. We should be careful as a nation not to go down the slippery slope of endless revenge by justifying various acts with the refrain, "but others did that too." We then rose as a nation from the ashes like the phoenix and decided to conscientiously do better by making Ghana's democracy and penchant for the rule of law admirable and attractive to many worldwide. An independent judiciary, in its true sense, is a bulwark for all who seek justice and should be jealously protected. The judiciary's foremost attraction should be its glaring independent nature, credibility, and transparency, hence the provisions in our 1992 Constitution seeking to guarantee same. The Ghana Bar Association, as well as other legal associations, both local and international, such as the Commonwealth Lawyers Association, Commonwealth Magistrates and Judges Association, and Commonwealth Legal Education Association, as a matter of principle, have made their voices heard on the ongoing process for the removal of the Chief Justice of Ghana, Her Ladyship, Justice Gertrude A.S. Torkornoo. It is hoped that any Superior Court judge will be well apprised of the entire process before ever being subjected to same in the spirit of fairness. Rising to the defense of the judiciary's independence is the mandate of the Ghana Bar Association, and this is not personality-driven. On this day that we meet to honor the memory of the martyrs of the rule of law, let us resolve as a nation to do ourselves proud and humbly walk away from settling scores endlessly, as we are one nation with one destiny. The Ghana Bar Association reiterates its call to insulate the judiciary from any interference whatsoever. They stand for justice, and they should administer justice to all persons, including themselves. We are confident that in the spirit of reconciliation, all the various calls made for a reconsideration of the suspension of the Chief Justice in the circumstances, as it sets a poor precedent, will not go unheeded. We yearn for peace and strive for justice. As found in Micah chapter 6, verse 8, we were given an indication what ultimately pleases the Lord in the following words. And what does the Lord require of you? To act justly, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God. I repeat, to act justly, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God. May the rule of law reign supreme in our land. May God bless the administration of justice in our country. May God bless the judiciary. May God bless the Ghana Bar Association. And may God bless our homeland Ghana and make it great and strong, bold to defend forever the cause of freedom and of right. May God also bless us to resist oppressors' rule with all our will and might forevermore, lest we forget. Thank you.